Perks are amazing, a place where Blizzard's designer can get a bit creative and make changes or modifiers for heroes that might be too risky to do otherwise, as perks aren't always available and can come at a cost while expanding the potential and skill ceiling of each hero, as well as being easy to delete if they are problematic. Look at Bastion's rocket launcher perk. It would probably be wrong to make it how the ability functions normally, but if the Bastion player is in a game where normal turret form isn't effective or just likes to destroy people from miles away, then they can choose to do so, as well as adapting to the new projectile you need to aim, serving as another layer of skill expression. At the same time, perks can be a testing ground for potentially base kit changes. For example, Juno's Creep perk was liked so much that eventually it was added onto her base kit, and it hasn't had any form of negative effect on Juno's or the game's state, if anything being a positive thing for her as it increased Juno's skill ceiling, which was a bit lacking for movement and aim heavy support. As we get closer to Season 2, which will be partially dedicated towards implementing some perks into the base hero, I decided to take a look into every hero's perk and pick which ones I believe would be great to be added next season. As a disclaimer, implementing a perk into the base hero would, in most cases, be accompanied with compensation nerfs or adjustments to the perk itself or the hero depending on the current power level of said heroes and perks. My picks are based on how much they would improve the hero's experience and identity without focusing so much on the overall strength on the hero. We'll mention in some cases what I would like to see nerfed, but if I don't, it doesn't mean the hero wouldn't require them if said perk is implemented. Let's begin with tanks. My first pick would be Ramatra's Vengeful Vortex Major perk. Ramatra's Vortex was originally intended to allow a hero from the tank roster to be able to deal with flying heroes like Pharah or now the cat without just giving it a long-range hitscan weapon, as the lack of range is a weakness that every tank must have in some capacity, and yes, even poke tanks lack in comparison to poke DPS. Ram's Vortex in theory will put them down and slow them, which would allow your team to easily take them down. Unfortunately, the ability has a very small vertical hitbox, and even if it was bigger, it would be very awkward to calculate in which area on the ground you should throw it to affect enemies upwards. Vengeful Vortex fixes both of these problems, as you can just throw it towards the enemy you want to target and recast it, making it very easy and intuitive to use against the heroes mentioned previously, granting its intended functionality, as well as making his kit more reliable at range against non-tank heroes, where he currently struggles. Ram isn't a particularly strong hero currently, but if it were to be implemented, I do believe the activation damage would likely need to be reduced a bit, as it is one of the strongest perks in the entire game. That being said, I don't believe it would break the hero or create a very negative experience, as his range is still somewhat limited and would require for his team to support him secure the kill as it does currently, but it would give him a stronger identity and a reason to pick him over the block slob he is known for. My second pick is actually from the newest tank Domina, in Power Mode. This perk allows her to use her shield as a wall for her boop to stun while dealing double damage. Now, hear me out. I know Domina is very strong right now, and she is already pretty decent up close for a poke tank, but I feel like it is too obvious that you could use her shield this way, and even on her trailer you can see it used like this. The damage bonus is completely unnecessary to be honest, and I could see her getting some other nerfs to her boop to compensate, but it will allow her for more creative uses for her shield outside, just blocking damage on the choke point, and would allow the Domina player to outplay some close range heroes at the cost of saving her shield to use it offensively, potentially leaving her and her team vulnerable. Using shields offensively is a very interesting space that you can already see implementing on her ult, so this would further define her identity as a hero, which could also alleviate her current high self-sustain and shield duration that is meant to allow her not to get destroyed by heroes that can just water her. My third choice would be Reinhardt's Shield Bash Major perk. This is my most rule of cool pick to be honest, as Rein is generally speaking a very functional tank for casuals and lower skill levels like he's supposed to. At first glance this perk looks very underwhelming, but it has so many uses it's not even funny. If you want to learn everything about it, I'd recommend this video, but to sum it up, it can be used to boop enemies away to kill allies, as a burst damage option, as a movement option to be able to even get into some high grounds and much more. This perk does nullify some of his weaknesses, but it doesn't make him unreasonable to fight against, and it could be what Reins need to give him a higher skill ceiling and boost his performance on higher ranks where he can struggle without hurting the experience of lower ranked Rein mains. That being said, if they do implement it, please allow him to still use the third person shield, as currently they share bind and you just cannot do it without wasting the bash. Lastly, and this might be controversial, but I believe Power Matrix should be part of Doom's base kit. Doom is currently in a very awkward space, where he's really easy to shut down by good players, and can be a menace in lower ranks, as those players just constantly charge his Power Punch, allowing him to 1v9 constantly with the other burst damage and stun duration. While Empowered Punch being strong is a key component of Doom's identity, I believe block to be a very unfun and skillless way to allow him to access it, which causes the previously mentioned issue. So my idea would be to adjust the major perk so his block only absorbs projectiles, including physical ones like Hawk's Hook, for like half a second, which would allow Doom to parry the CC abilities that easily shut him down, and changing the requirement to getting Power Punch from needing to mitigate certain amount of damage in the entirety of his block, to blocking a smaller portion of damage or a CC ability on that initial absorption part. This is very experimental, to be honest, and I could see how it could be very broken, but would help Doomfist feel less sluggish and less of a noob stomper without basically removing Empowered Punch, which a hero with as much skill ceiling shouldn't be in my opinion. Moving on to DPS, my number one pick is Reaper's Dire Trigger. A very obvious one, but there are good reasons for it. I personally think the perk itself isn't that well implemented, as it's currently just a burst damage option, as it doesn't actually function well at range and has almost no recovery. But if it were on the base kit, I would like it to see adjusted to allow Reaper to have something to do when he isn't at point blank. It would improve the overall health of the hero, making him a bit less sharp and allowing him to have more versatility, which I believe Reaper mains would appreciate. A very simple explanation, but I believe this is one we really may see implemented next season, as a secondary fire for Reaper is something Blizzard has been discussing multiple times over the years. Another similar case would be Torjon's Anchor Bolts. Torb is a very easy hero to play, and while there is nothing wrong with it, I personally believe his skill ceiling is below the bar of how low it should be for any given hero. Being able to throw his turret further, as well as allowing him to position it wherever he wants, provides a lot of potential thought around how the Tor player positions his turret, which is also the main aspect of the hero, so it will only further improve his identity as the turret hero, where his skill comes entirely around how you place it and play around it. I do know some Tracer player is already seething about this being possible, but if it becomes too problematic against those kind of heroes, they could easily implement fall of damage to the turret or limit its range of it. We have the only perk that I would like to see implemented on Tactical Salvo. This perk allows Soldier's Tactical Visor to have an actual output for higher skilled players, as it reduces both the recovery and cooldown of rockets while it's active. Visor has always been considered one of, if not the most underwhelming ult in the entire game outside very casual play, and while this doesn't remove the aimbot of ability, leaving it pretty appealing for those lower levels, it still makes it much better if you're good at the game. Even with this perk, Visor isn't considered particularly broken like Sojourns or Genjis sometimes are with their ultimate perks, so while it would definitely need to be toned down, it wouldn't make Soldier much more frustrating to go against or anything of the sort. Lastly, for DPS, we have two heroes that are straight up missing an ability, and their perks give them exactly that. Both Venture and Bastion have major perks that give them an ability on their secondary ability key. For Venture, Smart Extenders allows them to have some form of range pressure, which isn't as important in my opinion, as well as another ability that helps them match their shields, allowing a more bruisery and interactive playstyle rather than the hit and run that most players default to, which isn't particularly fun to go against. So they could potentially get their escape option slightly toned down to compensate for the outer power of the new ability. Similarly, giving Bastion Self-Repair isn't just to give him the ability he's missing, but allowing Blizzard to tone down some more frustrating aspects of the heroes, like the tank busting on turret form or how tanky he can be against heroes like Tracer. I personally think a different ability like the scouting one from Overwatch would be even better, as self-repair is just another form of tankiness in a way, but it is very nostalgic, Bastion players have been asking for it, and the video is about perks into the base kit, so... Moving on to supports, we have Kiriko's Raise Step major perk, which provides attack speed to Kiriko when she uses her TP. To be honest, either major perk would allow Kiriko to use her abilities more proactively, which means she could be balanced towards a more healthy spot, as some of the outputs of Suzu, like the invulnerability, could be nerfed or downright removed to compensate, making her less frustrating and more fun potentially in my opinion. The reason I choose Raise Step over Foxtrot is because Suzu is technically already usable as a more engaging fighting ability. Although it has some problems, TP is 99% of the time used purely as a disengage tool. I would however adjust the perk so it also provides attack speed to the target that she uses the TP on, with reduced numbers of course, but it would encourage Kiriko players to use the TP to boost or save allies and turn fights around like she was originally designed to do, rather than saving it up for whenever someone jumps on you. This would also encourage more aggressive and less healbotty playstyle that would make her more fun to play if you master her, as well as making her have a niche as the attack speed support, which right now is only available on her ultimate. Secondly, we have Illari's Rapid Construction minor perk. While this one is mostly just number buffs and would require her to be nerfed in other areas, I believe Illari's experience gets up significantly while she has this perk on. She's currently very limited in the ways she can place her pylon, as well as having a somewhat repetitive gameplay loop that centers around it, which due to the current cooldown can feel very boring to play as, which leads to her having a low pick rate despite being one of the strongest supports in the game. Having a lower cooldown on pylon, as well as the fact that it makes it instantly start healing you, allows it to be used in different ways that just as away from action and safely as possible, since if it gets destroyed the cooldown is a bit less punishing and the reposition cooldown also gets lower, so it allows you to have much better control over its position, and since the healing starts basically instantly, you aren't punished for doing so, making her identity as the turret support a lot stronger, which is a very similar case to Torv's. To finish the video up, let's talk about the two perks that have been confirmed already. First we have Mercy's Flash Heal, and honestly, it's fucking time for Mercy to have an actual cooldown. Sure, Rest has a cooldown, but the cooldown itself almost never matters, and there is no decision making on when it's best to use it. You can either use it after an ally died far away from the fight, or you just can't because they died in the middle of the fight. Allowing Mercy to have some form of skill expression on when it's best to quickly burst heal someone will come a long way to help her out and allow some room to nerf the more toxic aspects of her kit. Well, mostly just damage boost to be honest. I made a video about how I would like to see Mercy reworked, and while a more movement-based ability would have been preferred, in my opinion, her healing feels so atrocious that, yeah, let's just give her Flash Heal. The other perk that is getting added is Cleansing Grasp, and meh, like, it's definitely an improvement for Weaver, as well as potentially making him better to have as a support, especially for tank players, as Cleanse is a very powerful tool to have for those heroes. The problem is that it will only really come into play against anti-heal. Yes, it cleanses even the now global healing debuff, making it basically heal more, but it has such a long cooldown and you usually get pulled into safety that it won't end up mattering a lot, especially with how weak he is right now. I guess it is a considerable buff if you're playing him closer to action, but as a whole I don't believe that Grasp needs any more power and his other abilities are the ones that truly need some help. Thankfully Blizzard is aware he needs more than just grip cleansing, so hopefully he ends up in a much better spot overall. That's all everyone, so which perks do you think should be moved to the base kit of your favorite heroes? I'll read you down below and hope to see you on the next video.